for you guys. But coming up right now, we actually have a guest. He is a recurring guest, our first two-time guest. Actually, we're gonna have him come on different points of the year. We're gonna have also every segment that we have Coach Diego on, Profe Diego, head coach of Sweetwater High School's varsity soccer team. We're gonna have it sponsored, and this is where you were like, National City. Well, look, National City is 10 times better. Look at that. He is Coach Diego is actually holding right now the GKNC Good Kids Nasty City hat that he got. It's a dope brand. I'm not gonna lie. It really is. It's a dope ass brand. Really. We actually have another shirt and hat just like the one that Diego was holding right now. We're gonna go ahead and raffle that one off. Diego, give me a number 1 through 10.
Let's go 7.
7. If you're the 7th person to screenshot that you are subscribed to Two Balls and a Mic, I'll go ahead and make sure you get that. You don't have to be from National City. You could even get it. See. But you're not going to fit in it. But welcome, Diego. We wanted to talk to you because Diego up the second team. I'll go ahead and gladly throw him up on our second monitor, which is just my old TV.
What's up, Diego?
How's it going, guys?
Great to have you back, man.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
So how's everything going, or where's everything standing with high school sports coming back, or at least soccer that you know of?
So it's a little complicated. I was kind of briefly explaining it to Tony yesterday. Right now, everything is set to go for the new year. So it all basically depends on the winter sports, and we're traditionally a winter sport, but anything that used to be fall sports is now winter. So specifically, we're talking about the football season and those sort of sports. So if they start at the time that they're scheduled to start, then everything else will just fall into place. So they're set to start their workouts December 12th. That's preseason. And then if everything goes to plan and hopefully this COVID thing dissipates a bit, then we are set to start ourselves in February. And the tryouts would be actually the week of February 14th. So that's what we're looking at right now. That's what we're planning for. I'm obviously planning to have a season, not so much that there's not going to be a season. So that's what I've been working on over the last couple of weeks.
So like you said, that there's sports that are now moving to a different time slot per se, that they're not usually in. How concerned are you by having some of those players that you would traditionally have in the regular soccer season now think about, well, there's other sports that I haven't had a chance to play. I am also really talented in this sport. Are you facing any challenges that way, recruiting for soccer, or is there a solid base already?
We're fortunate. We have a pretty solid base, particularly because of the season we had last season. I think a lot of the boys are really looking forward to what's going to happen in 2021 for us. Having said that, it has crossed my mind, especially since you have 3 of the bigger sports all going on at the same time. In the spring, we're looking at soccer, baseball, and basketball all at the same time, along with, I believe, track and field. So it's these big sports that a lot of the kids participate in, all kind of bunched up into one season. And then we also have the concern of field space because we have to share all the facilities now. We're looking at, I believe, 10 sports all in one season. And traditionally, it's only about 5. So now that we have double the teams, double the sports, and basically just one field, one track, 2 gyms, we're fortunate enough to have 2 gyms. It looks like we're going to be negotiating a lot of field space and field time. So
now, normally high school sports, I know there's always like JV, varsity for every sport. Like, is this going to be an exception where it's just going to be an option for varsity sports, or are they still running with the whole JV, or even sometimes they have novice for just freshmen? So how is that going to work out?
Novice.
Yeah, so I'm planning to have all 3 teams. Okay. Like I mentioned the last time I spoke with you guys, we have a pretty good staff. I think that all of us can negotiate that. But that's at Sweetwater. We're also having a look at what is Chula Vista going to do, what is Southwest going to do, what is Hilltop going to be able to do. And that's honestly a good question. I have a good friend of mine, Amani Walker, over at Francis Parker. He's only going to field the varsity team this year. So I think it just depends on the program. It depends on field space. Like I mentioned, some schools are a lot smaller than Sweetwater, and that's really what it's going to come down to. So for sure, we're going to have a varsity program. Absolutely. I'm pushing towards JV. And a freshman team, I'm hoping that we can get one out there, and I'm going to plan for it, but we'll see how it goes because there's no point in having a team if there's no competition, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's true. I mean, you can win against three teams, and that what's the fun in that? So what are some things that, I mean, maybe you communicated with some of your former players or something, but what are you worried about as far as this upcoming season? If we were to assume that there is going to be a season and on schedule, as you say, what's your biggest concern in returning to a competitive type of league and atmosphere?
The first concern is obviously COVID. It's going to be in the back of everybody's mind, even if we do manage to kind of go over the hurdle of it being a significant factor. It's going to be in everybody's mind. So obviously figuring out what the protocols are going to be, what the district is expecting of us, what the school is expecting of us, and what we as a staff expect as well from the team. We fully recognize that a lot of the kids go home to grandparents as well. So we have to make sure that they're not exposing their grandparents to any sort of dangers, be it from a practice or be it from an away game perhaps. We can control what happens at Sweetwater somewhat, but who's to say that if we travel for an away game and we come back, maybe there's some sort of contamination. The second one would be the competitive aspect to it. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but if you take 2 weeks off from any sort of physical activity, you lose anywhere from 40 to 60% of your athletic ability. So even these kids who are, pretty thin, they're athletic kids, I don't know if they're going to be able to play 60, 90 minutes at a full competitive level as soon as they start, sort of prepping with us. So their athleticism, their whether or not they're going to be in shape, whether or not they're going to be able to play a full 90 minutes, it's all going to be an aspect of conditioning. And I think that's a serious concern of mine at this point, because it's been 6 months worth of a layoff for any sort of sports for them. And we're looking at another 5 months before our season even starts. So it could be a full year before they have some sort of competition. And it might take them anywhere from a month to 6 weeks to sort that out. And that's a genuine concern of mine. And just with that, just trying to avoid injuries, because if you don't play for a year, you're a little bit slower. And that's how injuries sort of start developing, because you go in late on a tackle or somebody goes in late on you and you pick up that sort of injury, or you haven't ran for a while. So when you try to push yourself for 90 minutes, you pull a hamstring or a quad or something like that. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that significantly. So it's all the things that you wouldn't figure as much because they're kids, but we know it's going to pop up. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. And obviously we speak with the kids. We have contact with the kids as far as checking in on them and kind of knowing what they're doing. But we're really encouraging them to work out on their own if they can.
What would be? I'm sorry.
I think you were going to ask the same question I was actually.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Go for it.
What are your expectations from the district in order to help out? Maybe providing a facility for players to get tested at, or anyway. What are your expectations, or what do you hope the district can help you guys with at all?
I'm sort of basing it on what the school's expecting from the district as well. I think right now it really is an individual responsibility. It's up to me as a coach, as the head of the program. It's up to the principal, for example, or the athletic director, us to have the conversation to know what we have to do, and not necessarily just rely on what the district is doing. Because one of the things about the Sweetwater district, for example, it's just so massive that maybe something that they detail as being a solution could work for the majority of the schools, but perhaps it might not work for Sweetwater, or something that works for Sweetwater might not work for Eastlake. So it's one of those things where, as much as I want them to give us a solid answer and a solid solution, I know that it's not completely possible. So I'm having conversations with our athletic directors. I'm having conversations with the other coaches, and we're sort of coming up with our own plan on what's going to happen if a player gets tested positive. What's going to happen if there's some, hopefully not, but if there's some sort of breakout. And that's another conversation that we have to have with the coaches themselves, because God forbid that somebody at Sweetwater during the season gets COVID, and he finds out after an away game against one of the schools that we're playing against. Well, now there's a concern not only for my program, but that coach's program. And if we have in-person classes and they do end up going to class the next day, then it's a little bit more of a concern. So it's one of those things where we're kind of, I don't want to say we're playing it by ear, because that sounds like we don't really have a solid solution, but we're constantly having a dialogue to sort of figure out what's going to happen if any of these scenarios do pop up. But I'm just hoping they could give us some sort of clear guidance on protocol. I think that's really what I want, is just protocol in case something does happen. So that's sort of what I'm expecting from them.
Yeah, and we can tell you that there is protocols out there right now.
And sometimes you have to break them.
But if you follow them, you should be fine.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that if you are a student or an athlete, or you're listening and you're like, well, that's me. I'm usually pretty athletic, but I haven't played in 6 months. What type of drills or conditioning would you recommend at home? I mean, some of these kids have been, the blue apartments, man, like in Chula, in National City. Like, I don't know if you know what the blue apartments are, but everybody knows the blue apartments are in National City.
Off the 24th?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you're in a confined space, how do you necessarily train? Some kids have very stern Mexican parents and don't say, mijo, don't go out when the lights are off. And you can't really go in the early morning. So
don't go out because of the virus.
También. So what would you recommend to that student athlete who's like, well, I want to start to get the motor running, but it's tight. Their space is tight.
Right. So aside from hopefully being able to convince their parents to go for a run somewhere, a lot of the resistance workouts, I know that's definitely something that's been of fashion lately in the workout world, especially with the whole CrossFit programs. Mm-hmm. A lot of the resistance workouts do definitely help. So we're encouraging them to reach out to our fitness coach, Alberto. I think you guys have met him. Mm-hmm. He's really good at coming up with workout plans for the kids. So I recommend it to anybody who's been wanting or considering trying out for the program to reach out to him, to have a conversation with him, to see what sort of plan he could put him on. And aside from that physical resistance workout that they could do at home in a confined space, I do encourage them to at least try to ride a bike, go for a run. Sprint training is probably the key for our program, mm-hmm. because of the amount of pressing that we do. Mm-hmm. So that I definitely encourage some sort of sprint training and running hills. One of the things about National City, it's really hard to find a flat street in National City. Yep. There's hills mm-hmm. everywhere. So I do just encourage them to basically go find one of the bigger hills and try to run up it as many times as they can.
Even small hills, you'd be surprised. I mean, for me, any hill's a big hill, but mm-hmm. anywhere you can get that and that too. Would you recommend even like YouTube videos of workouts, or just
yeah? Actually, I recommend the Instagram. Everybody's on Instagram. I recommend the Instagram pages, those fitness pages. Even I'm a huge fan of SanDiego.Fútbol. That's on Instagram. He's some trainer from Australia. He has really good workouts, both for ball work and just workouts in general. So I recommend it all the time.
I love it.
Taking notes.
Hey, I'm trying out for the Loyal. I don't know if you knew this. I'm trying out next season.
We have a bet going.
I'm going to be considered. I'm not going to make the team, but I'm going
I have
to be
$100 that he's not even going to be considered to be part of the team.
But Diego's seen me, and we've gone over this before. Diego knows, like, he's seen some stuff. He's also seen mine.
Bro, I hope you make it. I'd be willing to lose those $100.
This man was witness to the torn ACL.
Oh yeah,
the first time.
Yeah,
it was.
I was there.
He was there, and
I was there. I was really sad. Because at that point, I kind of figured that was the end of a glorious playing career.
But it wasn't. I kept going.
But I didn't.
It happened again.
There wasn't a goalkeeper that I trusted more than Tony. Sorry.
Wow, respect. So I mean, with the team going, and I don't know if you heard of what happened with San Diego Loyal in their last game. I mean, again, stuff like that can happen at all levels of sports. So I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And then how could you maybe have that similar mentality of like standing up for what's right, or with high schoolers? Right.
So I watched the bits and pieces of it on ESPN, and then I read a couple of the reports that happened, and I heard the Arizona's coach's argument that it's just something that happens in soccer or in sports. And it's an argument that I understand, but it's not something that I necessarily agree with. Just because it happens doesn't mean that it should be accepted. In regards to my teams in general, they're very aggressive, my teams. There's a lot of insults being thrown, but I've always been keen on telling them to respect their opponent. because ultimately it's going to be a game at the end of the day, and they're going to run into these people in the parking lot or in the street, or even when we play tournaments, sometimes they see them in the same restaurant. So you want to keep things amicable. You just want to have a conversation with them more than anything. And I think that the teams that I've coached over the years, they've done that. They just sort of had conversations with the teams they play against. There's smack talking, obviously. But when it comes to homophobia, for example, that happened in the last Loyal game, or when it comes to racism, which happened to the game prior to this last one, it's not acceptable. It just isn't. And we're at a point now in our society where a lot of people are standing up against it. Obviously, a lot of the cultural phenomenons that have happened this year, especially with the BLM movement, point out that there's still a significant fault in our system, that these sort of things are still being encouraged to some degree by certain parts of the country and certain parts of maybe even this county. And I think it's important and it's critical for us that are in a position of some sort of authority as a head coach to make it clear to our players that it's not acceptable. You know, especially at Sweetwater High School. Sweetwater High School is one of the more open and accepting schools in the district. A couple of years ago, I think it was our prom king or queen that were members of the LGBT community, or it was homecoming or something like that. I can't recall. But Sweetwater's always been relatively accepting of everybody. So I make it clear to the players that certain words aren't allowed. I make that clear early in tryouts. And I'll be honest, sometimes it is tested because these kids, they have certain words built in their lexicon of just constant words. And I have to sort of make sure that I'm staying on top of it. And I tell my coaches the same thing, make sure that you guys aren't making these references or don't allow them to speak a certain way. And we make it very clear that this sort of behavior, this sort of language is just unacceptable. During games, I make it clear to them that you're not allowed to insult anybody and you're not allowed to insult the ref. Like, the only person talking to the ref is me. So it's just something that we have to sort of correct, and we have to make sure that it starts from us as coaches. And then hopefully from there you build a culture that they just don't do it overall.
No, that's a great mentality. And that's honestly why we feel it's so great that Loyal took that stance. It's a professional team, and it's not just a professional team. It's the greatest soccer coach in U.S., a soccer player in U.S. history. And you never know, maybe soccer coaching one day. But it's important for.
You have the greatest coach right here, okay, man. Come on, put some respect.
In the making. In the making. He'll get his turn at Bayern at some point.
Some point, hopefully.
But no, that's definitely something important that everybody out there, and not just the young kids, as anybody out there can take away, is like, look, it's a game at the end of the day, and there is a gamesmanship to it. Sometimes you use words and vocabulary that you wouldn't be necessarily proud of in any other setting, but as long as you keep that respect with the opponent, with everybody involved, I think it's all good. Once it's not just try not to, first of all, but if it does go beyond that, make sure that you're able to retract it or just make some sort of healing motion forward. But no, it's a really good stance to have. Well, Diego, I really appreciate you joining us. I know it's a little bit shorter today, but we're definitely going to have you come back. I think it's dubbed on Sioux High Soccer Profe Talks, so you can check it out. I think that's what we. So nice. I think what we're going to call this is Profe Talks. So Profe Talks is sponsored by Good Kids National City clothing brand. Again, local, National City, same thing. They're doing it for the community. Same thing that we want to do is just bring that community together. And I know you have some plans that we want to get into maybe a little bit later as far as what we want to do for the community. Don't worry. Sweetwater plays Chula Vista at some point, and you'll be a little bit more involved with that.
I'll be rooting for Sweetwater.
Your friends are not going to be happy with that. I went. Oh wow, this is breaking news.
You don't hear the Chula Vista Sweetwater rivalry. Oh else.
My God, that's all right.
Yeah, man, I gotta go. Go with our sponsors. Gotta go with what this show's about.
up until this segment.
I don't know where Chula High stands on all these issues.
And
And Diego was convincing me, to lean more on the National City side.
There we go.
For all I know, Chula Vista High School hates every individual with 9 fingers.
Oh man,
It's pure hatred.
I would have to talk to Coach O for that.
But really appreciate it, Diego, and we'll definitely catch you closer to the centennial season for Sweetwater High School.
Exactly. Yep.
And it's exciting. I'm excited. But thank you, Diego, for joining us, man.
Cross our fingers, everything goes through correctly.
You guys have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
You too. Thank you.
Man.